You're listening to the Vikes Verified podcast. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Vikes Verified podcast. This is episode 100. It's a special one for us. Made it to the milestone. We're so glad to be out here in Stillwater, live from Kupp Studios. It is tailgating season, and Kupp Foods is your go-to grocery and liquor store. Why scurry around town picking up all your game day needs when you can just go to one store? Look no further than Kupp to grab your hamburgers, hot dogs, brats, chips, veggie platters, deli cold cuts, party trays, and desserts all in one place. Be sure to hit up Kupp Liquor before you head out to grab all your drinks that the tailgaters will love. Alrighty, Matt. Episode 100, the Vikings are coming off 2 straight losses. We're going to break it down a little bit. We were out in LA for the Rams game. Incredible vibes leading up to the game, and honestly, an overall great experience. But, regardless of outcome, I still enjoyed my time out there. It was a very entertaining game. What a beautiful stadium SoFi Stadium is. Very unique concept. I would highly recommend it for any Vikings fans looking for an away game. We had a great time, but, just not quite able to win this ball game. We came out hot, scored 14 points, 2 touchdowns in the first quarter, ran them right down the field on the first drive. Things were looking great for the Minnesota Vikings. But then our defense had to get on the field, and Puka, Nacua, Cooper Kupp, and Matthew Stafford had a day against us. Overall, Vikings lose 30-20. We're going to break this game down a little bit before we get into the Colts preview. Matt, what was some highlights in this game that really stuck out to you?
Yeah, to echo your statement, I thought SoFi Stadium was absolutely electric. The tailgating was really fun. A lot of Vikings fans out there, which was I was not surprised by that at all. But the open air feel to it, I thought, I really hold U.S. Bank Stadium in a high regard, and SoFi Stadium was the only one that I visited personally that I thought was a step above it. So that says a lot for that stadium. We had great seats, great experience, atmosphere, and overall, I agree with Nick that even with the loss was a great time. But to kind of point out some highlights from that game, I thought that the offense did a good job early. We started off with 2 quick touchdowns. I thought we were going to have a pretty successful day offensively in Los Angeles, but then things started to dry up. We weren't able to pick up third down conversions, and then this team ultimately, had some untimely penalties that really killed us throughout the whole game. So to me, the things were really the offense's inability to stay consistent, and then I thought the penalties were just a huge issue for us. The Byron Murphy holding call was garbage. I thought that was a phantom call. Obviously, the missed face mask on Darnold is atrocious, so not a lot of things going our way in that department, but overall this team has to be a little bit tighter in that department if they want to win ball games, because if they start to get loose, that's just not going to be a winning recipe. So it's time for this coaching staff and players to really hone in and figure out what's going on to really fix that issue. But the biggest result from this game was the loss of left tackle Christian Darrisaw. Tears his ACL and MCL, is out for the rest of the season. So a tragic loss on the offensive line. Such a bright future for Christian Darrisaw, and really was the stalwart of this offensive line. So it's going to be really hard to replace him, and we'll talk about his future replacement here shortly. But Nick, what are your overall thoughts on this team post Darrisaw?
Yeah, so I think the outlook still remains the same for me. Obviously, Christian is an all-world player, tons of respect for him, but, with the replacement we were able to get with him, and I think just the team kind of rallying around players that we've lost to injury this year, I think has been kind of a theme, and I think that there's a lot of opportunity for this team left. We hit the AFC South stretch of the schedule here, 3 teams that are either 500 or well below it, so there's tons of opportunity in front of us. Green Bay and Detroit playing each other this week. There's a chance to jump a slot up in the division. Bears losing on a Hail Mary, that certainly didn't hurt. But back to this game, Josh Oliver and Trent Sherfield scoring the 2 touchdowns. I don't think anyone on earth could have predicted that as our only 2 touchdowns. Will Riker with 2 field goals. There's a couple times we had to settle for field goals that really made me uncomfortable. First half, just really would love to punch one in and get 7.
Naylor dropped catch.
Yes, and the Naylor drop, there was a series of miscues that ended up costing us. Couldn't get a stop when we needed to, and then obviously to have our final drive where we have a chance to, drive the field, get a 2-point conversion, maybe we get some free football, some overtime in LA, and that is stripped from us by a face mask call that was very blatant. We had a couple refs that actually were looking directly at the play, but weren't able to make the call. So that was tough. Overall, these last 2 games just tough, but you look at the schedule to this point, and you look at Lions to Rams on a 4-day turnaround.
That's tough.
I think that I'm very optimistic about the next week because of the addition of TJ Hawkinson. I think will bring a resurgence to our offense and just kind of a different factor that Sam Darnold hasn't necessarily had yet in this offense as the safety blanket of TJ Hawkinson over the middle, such a solid route runner, great hands. I think he was missed in this Rams game. And I know me and you about 15, an hour before kickoff, we're thinking, if this guy can play, he's going to make a big difference. And all of a sudden it flops in their favor. They get Nacua back. We don't have Hawkinson. So they're a weapon up. We're a weapon down. And the tides were turned on us.
Yeah. Was a little bit disappointed not to see Hawkinson suit up there. But again, I do appreciate the cautious approach that the Vikings are taking. Now, Kevin O'Connell came out today saying that Hawkinson will be active on Sunday and is not on the snap count. So very, very excited to see how he looks against the Colts. I think this is a much-needed boost to this offense. And we may have lost Darrisaw, but we do have Hawkinson and Reisner coming back now into the fold. So even with one loss, we do have a couple ads coming back in to help hopefully kind of right the ship there. Another thing that stood out to me from this game, Nick, was Jordan Addison was quiet. This is the second week in a row that Addison really has not done a lot. He did stir up some news in the media with an Instagram story with the hashtag #Free3. A lot of Vikings fans went to Twitter and their different social media channels to spew a bunch of nonsense.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, Addison put that to rest. Now, I think, in their defense and the fans who kind of went crazy, I do think that, knowing the landscape of his last couple games, I thought that the timing of it was a little bit questionable, to say the least. But, cannot deny his talent. I know he obviously has had some things that he's had to work throughout his early career, but he is a guy that I don't want the Vikings to give up on, and we need to find a way to get him balls because he has one of the higher separation ratings in the league. So obviously has the capabilities to get open and be an impact on this team, and Kevin O'Connell and Wes Phillips need to do a better job getting the ball in his hands.
Yeah, I think a lot of people talk about Darnold forcing the ball to Jefferson a lot. There's plenty of opportunity on this offense, and going back to the separation report, this is a Pro Football Focus report. Of 12 eligible opportunities, Jordan Addison had clear separation on 11 of those. That's a 91.67 separation percentage. That is second in the league this week. Minimum 7 opportunities. So there's no denying that he's open. And even when he's not completely open, you still trust a guy like that to go up and get the ball. Would like to see, I think, like I said, with Hawkinson back in this lineup, I think it's going to put Sam Darnold in more of a point guard mentality where he's distributing, to more players than just Justin Jefferson. He's made it a point to get him his targets, and you have to, because that is the best player in the league, best receiver in the league. But you've got a really, really talented number 2 over there in Jordan Addison, and it's only right that he starts getting some action. So I'm looking forward to seeing how he increases his volume this week in the game plan. I want to talk a little defensively. I want to talk a little bit about Dallas Turner, Matt. First round defensive end. This guy is, thought of to have a extremely high ceiling, ton of potential out of Alabama. Great defense that he played for, well coached. And now all of a sudden 7 snaps in back-to-back games combined. He's just not really getting on the field. We saw him getting on the field more in week 1 where he did have a sack on Daniel Jones. We're starting to think, this guy could be a legitimate defensive rookie of the year candidate. And then you go ahead and see Jared Verse playing for the Rams. He is the front runner now, had a great game against us. But Dallas Turner is not getting much opportunity. Do you think there's any chance that this is a injury-related issue, 1, or 2, a struggle to fully grasp the playbook?
That's a really great question. I don't know if I have a solid answer to it because I've asked myself the same question, and my mind is leaning towards hoping that it is more injury-related because you heard what the coaches were saying about Dallas Turner throughout training camp, preseason. We obviously see him get a couple sacks. I think he got a sack in one of the first games as well. So obviously you saw such a hot start for this guy that it didn't really – the thought of him maybe not knowing the plays didn't really add up from all the words that the coaching staff, the praise that they were giving him. And all of a sudden that just went away in these last few weeks. And it is a little bit more interesting. I do wonder if there's somewhat of an injury lingering, whether it's a hamstring, ankle, who the heck knows. But something is a little bit off here in this situation. There's no reason if he's fully healthy why he should be only playing 7 snaps over the last 2 games. We gave up way too much to go and get this guy, and we've seen that he can get after the quarterback. Even if he isn't fully comprehending this playbook, you've got to be able to dumb it down in a way and find a way to get him in on a certain allotment of snaps that are maybe more simple per se, and just let him be him and just go get to the quarterback. So to me, very discouraging, and I think this Sunday will be really interesting to watch in terms of I think the Vikings are going to make a concerted effort to get Dallas Turner on the field. What I'm more concerned about seeing is what Dallas Turner does with the uptick in snaps, because if he does go out there more and doesn't produce, I think that gives the Viking staff more reason to go back to what they were doing and not getting him featured on this defense.
Yeah, looking forward to seeing how his volume takes an uptick here. He's a guy that I believe you got to find a way to get on the field regardless of what that position group looks like. Obviously, Van Ginkel and Grenard having career years up to this point, but that doesn't mean that you can't find a way to get all 3 of them on the field, and I'm excited to see how they do that. Now, let's get into our Duke Cannon studs and duds of the week. Duke Cannon, are you a hard worker? Then you need a soap that works just as hard as you do. Look no further than Duke Cannon and their seasonal selections, including Trophy Game, Buck Moon, and their ever-popular candy corn. If you're feeling like you're in the Halloween spirit, grab yourself some Duke Cannon's big-ass brick of soap today and try it out for yourself. Climb aboard the Duke Cannon train and get the best in men's hair care, beard care, soaps, deodorants, and cologne. DukeCannon.com. You got to check them out. All right, Matt. Starting with some studs. There's a couple of them. I want to lay one out that's not a popular take, but I'm going to take Ryan Wright. Okay. Why? Because Ryan Wright, 3 kicks, 151 yards. That's a net 50.3-yard average. This is a guy who is kind of on the ropes coming into the season after a sophomore slump season, had an elite rookie year as a punter. I'm just happy to see him bouncing back and being able to hit good punts for us when we're backed up on our own goal line or we're in our own territory. We need to flip the field. So that's going to be my first stud.
I'll follow up, and I will say Josh Oliver is one of my starts from this game. There's only going to be a handful of them, but Josh Oliver has done a pretty admirable job filling in that tight end 1 or 2 role with Hawkinson out. Been able to always exceed in the run game, but he's had the ability to find the end zone now a few times, and just have been impressed. I like really having him in as like our tight end 3. I think he's invaluable to this tight end room, and his, like I'd mentioned, ability to block in the run game cannot be something that's overlooked. So shout out to Josh Oliver.
All right, and the next one's going to be Trent Sherfield scoring his first touchdown as a Minnesota Viking. I think it's very interesting. He's kind of been floating in that wide receiver 4 to 5 spot. Excellent run blocker, Trent Sherfield. You don't see a lot of receivers block like him on the perimeter, and I have a good feeling when we run out Trent Sherfield and Josh Oliver in the same package, the defense and the defensive coordinator are thinking they are going to run the ball. Well, we caught him off guard with a little play action. Trent Sherfield slips in the flat, catches his first touchdown. I just love having a guy who's willing to get it out of the mud and block, not see a ton of praise, and just go out there and do his job every game, and Trent has done that so far.
And I'll leave the studs list there with a loss. I don't want to get too crazy. So we will transition into some duds from this game. And I will start off, and this is not a player on the Vikings. I think one of the duds was the referees. One of the worst showings I've seen recently from them. Multiple missed calls on us. Really put us in a hard spot in this game being on the road, short week. Not only do we have to play a good Rams team, but we had to play a bad set of refs. So they were one of my duds. Another one that I had was Byron Murphy, even though I thought that it was kind of a phantom call. He just didn't have the best game, and I thought the secondary, just the whole game was chasing the Rams wide receivers, and he was one of them that I thought just could have done a little better job staying tighter on him.
Okay, and mine's going to be the Vikings front 7. I'm not going to single anyone out necessarily, but when you have 0 sacks in a road game, 0, and you have a team that is top 10 in the league in pressures, that's just not a winning formula. Jonathan Grenard is having one of his best career years. Now, what the Rams were doing is they were forcing Jonathan Grenard to drop in coverage, and it was very smart from their offensive coordinator. The way that we played defense, they'd flip Grenard's responsibility from being a pass rusher to now being forced to cover in the flats, therefore not letting our best pass rusher get as many pass rushing snaps. But anytime you get 0 sacks on the road, like I said, against a quarterback of Matthew Stafford's caliber, he's going to sit back there and dice you up, which he did. So looking forward to see how the front 7 can get back on track against the Colts.
Definitely. I'll finalize the duds here in a guy in Jalen Naylor. Tough drop for him.
Really tough.
Just really in a critical time of the game. I think he probably gets into the end zone, if not real close. So
could have been a TD.
To turn that into potentially 7-3 was a very tough spot for us to really have to deal with at that point of the game. So he is on my duds list. Now, before we get to our Cub Foods Captain of the Week, the Vikes Verified podcast is sponsored by Jimmy's Dressing and Dips. The leaves are changing and the weather is cooling down, and that means it's Jimmy Caramel season. It is delicious with apples, pretzels, celery, ice cream, or even on your finger. You can't go wrong with however you want to dip Jimmy's Caramel Dip. It's available in original or sea salt caramel, and you can find Jimmy's at your local grocery store today.
All righty, Matt. Cub Foods Captain of the Week. I'm going to follow up on my Duke Cannon Studs report. I'm going to go with Ryan Wright as the Captain of the Week, and that's pretty sad. Our punter is the Captain of the Week this week. But I could have picked Justin Jefferson, but he's already a captain, so Ryan Wright it is.
All right, I originally had Trent Sherfield on this list, but with him being on the studs list, I'll transition here. I'm going to stay in the special teams department, and Will Reichard. He is just a model of consistency for this team.
What a player.
Has not missed a kick yet, and just continues to excel at the kicker position. Not only love him on the field, but off the field as well, so shout out to Will the Thrill.
All righty, let's get into our biggest acquisition today. Obviously, with the downfall of Christian Darrisaw, hoping for as speedy of a recovery as possible. Great human being, great player. We go out and we make a trade to prove that we're still competing and we're still in this NFC North race. We go get Cam Robinson from the Jaguars, who is going to play his former team here in 2 weeks, and that'll be an interesting homecoming for him. Let's talk a little bit about the compensation here, Matt. What you liked most about this deal? It seems to me like we're getting, a pretty high-end rental tackle for the rest of this season with an opportunity to get a comp pick as well at the end of it. Can you explain the compensation package?
Yeah, so the Vikings gave up a conditional 5th-round pick that could be a 4th based on playing time. The Vikings got back Cam Robinson, a conditional 2026 7th-round pick, and the Jaguars are also paying $7 million of the remaining $9 million left on Robinson's contract. So the Vikings are only on the hook for $2 million. Shout out to Kwesi in this front office. I thought this was a great move, not only getting a guy like Cam Robinson in the building, but their ability to be swift and going to get and make a trade happen with a team that didn't really have to feel forced to make that move till November 5th. This front office was able to really make them pull the trigger, and now Cam Robinson is in the building practicing tomorrow and is expected to play on Sunday night against the Colts. So very excited to see his impact on this team. Overall, he's kind of right around the middle of the league in terms of a tackle, but really good in the pass protection game. Can see some improvement in the run game, but I think the biggest thing the Vikings wanted to shore up was making sure they give Sam Darnold enough time in that pocket. So I think Cam Robinson not only provides that, but now just gives this team the depth that it needs to continue having. Right now you have Cam Robinson, and you still have David Quessenberry, Blake Brandel, and also Dalton Risner coming back at a guard position. So this offensive line, even with the loss of Darrisaw, is starting to kind of round itself out and balance. One thing that I think is forgotten from a lot of fans in this trade aspect is the possibility of the Vikings getting a comp pick if Cam Robinson signs elsewhere in this offseason. So the Vikings give up a conditional 2026 5th-round pick, but I think if he does leave, which Darrisaw returning next year, I would assume he probably does, the Vikings should get some sort of equal return now. So I thought for the amount that we had to give up and the impact player that we got, this is a big win for us. Nick, what is if you had to give this trade a grade, what are you giving it?
I'm giving this a B+. I wanna even dip into A-, but it's not going to really grade itself until we see his performance on the field. But if you look at the value we got him for and the opportunity to get compensation if he leaves, I just thought it was a great job of going out and addressing something that's going to be a gaping hole for us. It's so hard to replace all-pro caliber tackle like Christian Darrisaw, but I think this is about as good of a job as you can do. Not necessarily a top 10 guy in Cam Robinson, but he's not a bottom 10 guy either. He's right in that 10 to 20 range in terms of offensive tackles, and he's more than serviceable with over 90 starts under his belt.
And that's the biggest thing, too, is like you had mentioned, over 90 career starts for this guy. So he's not just someone who is fresh to the game. He has seen a lot, has proven his starter capability in this league, and obviously I think this is a huge boost for him going from a Jaguars team that was really out of playoff contention, somewhat faltering, to now a Vikings team that is in the hunt, really operating at full cylinders. And I think if he can get into the swing of things and acclimate himself into this offense and locker room, I think that he can be a really great addition for this offense. So excited to have him in a Vikings uniform, and for the fact that the Vikings are not throwing in the towel. This front office and coaching staff knows what they have, and they're going out and they're trying to go get it, as Everson Griffin would say.
As they should, man. You can't afford to waste a season in the NFL. It's too valuable.
The Vikings are coming off 2 losses in a 5-day span, and that means there's a lot to vent about, and that will bring up the Vikes Verified Vent Line. We have Matthew Sorley calling in from Wichita, Kansas. Matt, how you doing today?
I'm good. How are you boys doing?
We are doing good. Remaining optimistic regardless of the last 2 outcomes. Matt and I had the chance to be in LA for that game. We had a great time regardless of result, but losing a franchise left tackle in Christian Darrisaw was certainly another sour taste in our mouth after that loss. I guess I just want to open the floor up to you. What have you seen in these last 2 games that's been detrimental to the Vikings' success, dropping 2 straight?
That's a good question. I think the first game is more playing the Lions. Everyone has the Lions going to the Super Bowl. Yep. We handled them pretty well, I think, especially at home. I think the biggest thing for us is we got to stop when it's short yardage and try to throw the ball 40 or 50 yards down the field. I think that's getting a little ridiculous. And then last game, I would say kind of the same thing. The Rams average, they give up 150 rushing yards per game.
Mm-hmm.
We only had 58 or so. So definitely got to run the ball a little more. But at the same time, when it's 3rd and 4, 3rd and 2, we don't need a 40-yard completion. We just got to do like little end around with Jordan Addison or get Jalen Naylor involved, even though you can't catch the ball. But something like that. I mean, we just stop with the big plays when, we don't necessarily need them the most. Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely. And I think that's kind of been – me and Matt have talked about that frequently since, honestly, KOC has started his tenure here. Have a ton of respect for him as a play caller, and he sees a lot of success. But we've always kind of struggled under his leadership in short yardage situations. And I don't know if it's lack of creativity, if it's offensive line issue. I can't really pinpoint it, but it seems like when we have that 3rd and 2, 4th and 1, 4th and 2. I don't feel as confident as I should. Whereas there's other teams in the NFL, you look at Buffalo and Philly, these guys are getting it automatically, just with them having a plan and a certain way they attack that. It seems like Minnesota kind of goes back and forth, doesn't have a tremendous game plan in short yardage situations, and it hurts us at the end of games. You see it time and time again.
Yeah, to me it seems like especially Darnold is choosing to go on these deep routes when, if you look at the tape and run it back, there's actually a lot of options that are open that are a little bit more intermediate to short routes. And obviously he has a lot of trust in Justin Jefferson, which is why I think we see him throw a lot of go balls to him and a lot of deep routes. But at the end of the day, like you're saying, we need to make sure that we're still picking up first downs to keep the offense moving, because I thought, the offense did a pretty good job overall in the game. We go out and score 2 early touchdowns right away. For us being there, it felt like, we were really going to make a statement here in LA. But it was more the defensive side of things that was more surprising to me. Our defense, our pressure really in the last 2 games has dried up. We're not really getting to the quarterback at the same rate that we were in the first handful of games when we were 5-0. And at the end of the day, you're seeing when we can't get there, the secondary has too many open holes, and therefore, them taking advantage of us constantly. So I think, we're going to have to find a way to not only get the pass rush more involved, but also I want to see Dallas Turner get more involved as well, because 7 snaps over the last 2 games is just unacceptable from a first-round rookie.
Yeah, I really don't understand that whatsoever. I mean, that's just kind of inexcusable. And I know Brian Flores came out and said, our the room that he's in is pretty deep, but then again, you trade up to get this guy.
For sure.
You should definitely get him some snaps. But to go off Nick's point about the KOC, I think he got a little criticized last year for being too conservative, for kind of running Madison all the time. And he's like, you know what? All right, screw it. I heard what you guys said.
Yeah.
I'm gonna just throw the ball and see what happens. And obviously Darnold comes into the system and he can sling it, but against the Lions, when it's 3rd and 4, all we needed was a first down basically to win the game, and then we throw it like 20 yards or so. I mean, that's when you got to do, I don't know, maybe like 4 straight runs with Aaron Jones, maybe get Ty Chandler involved, Or like I said, do an end around with Jordan Addison, Jalen Naylor, line up, Jefferson in the backfield, something like that, just to get them, kind of off their toes and whatnot. So, and I agree, the defense the past couple of games has just been, I don't know if I want to say they figured Flores out by any means, but at the same time, it's, if we're going to rush all these guys, we got to bring some pressure in. We obviously did not do that against LA. And also, I'm not blaming the refs by any means, but what was it? We had 4 penalties on defense or something like that, and 3 of them were on third downs. Like, it's just kind of like, all right, like
the Byron Murphy holding, that phantom holding call drove me nuts. So I mean, I agree. You can point to officiating. That's one thing I do agree with Kevin on. He's like, I'm never gonna put the game in the hands of the officials. They're gonna call what they're gonna call. We don't have control over that. But I do want to ask you, as long as we're talking about defense. So my couple points is on the Dallas Turner topic. Regardless of if he's behind Grenard and Van Ginkel, you're telling me there's not a way to deploy all 3 of them at the same time. There has to be. And you got to find a way to do it. And secondly, I want to ask you a little bit about the cornerback position, because we obviously know we lost the beloved Duke Shelley, who the last time we played the Colts was playing the best football of his career. Seemed like he had about as much swagger at the cornerback position as he could. He was locking people down. Now we moved to some vets. We got Stephon Gilmore. We got Shaq Griffin kind of holding down those starting spots. I'm really kind of struggling to decide if this experiment is going to really bite us in the ass or if it's going to pay off in the end. What have you seen from those 2 guys? And do you ever wish that you saw the Duke back in the secondary for us?
Yes, of course. I mean, he brought him in for training camp, right? And then we cut him. I really thought he was going to make the team for a second, but for Gilmore and Shaq, it's just kind of like these guys they're let's just be honest, they're out of their prime, right?
They seem a step slow to me. Like they're a step or 2 slow.
I think, we're getting killed, especially in the Rams game, with a lot of underneath balls, and we're just that was the biggest concern coming into the season, honestly, in my opinion, was the cornerbacks. We haven't had good cornerbacks
since Xavier Rhodes.
Yeah. That's exactly who I was going to say, Rhodes. And so, obviously Christian Darrisaw tore his ACL, MCL. I really thought they were going to go get, J.C. Horn or something like that, maybe beef up that secondary, beef up that cornerback position, but I don't know. I just think we're getting killed in that category, and you play 10 yards off the ball, you're going to get exposed. You know? Like, we play a lot better when we play press, but sometimes, when you get these big leads like we kind of did with Green Bay and then the Jets, we go cover 3, soft cover 2, and it's just like, all right, guys, like, let's play how we got there. Let's not soften this up.
And I think part of that could be I think part of it's a personnel issue too. And how much do you want to walk Stephon Gilmore and Shaq Griffin down on the line and press some of these young receivers in the NFL? I mean, we had the personnel to do it this summer on paper. I mean, rest in peace to Kyrie Jackson, and what happened to Mekhi Blackmon in training camp sucks too. But like, you look at those 2 guys, and I think they were really looking at those 2 guys to be press man corners in this scheme. Had the size, had enough quickness and athleticism still to run with these young receivers. But like, if you're gonna ask Stephon Gilmore and Shaq Griffin to go down and press, Cooper Kupp and Nacua and hold these guys in check, I think it could be even worse than what we saw on the field. And I think that's a reason that we're playing a little bit soft, and it seems like we've gotten a bit figured out, is because I think teams are realizing, hey, they're not going to walk down and man press us. They don't have the personnel for that in the secondary. So as much as I love the age and experience in the secondary, that includes Harrison Smith, who love Harrison Smith, always will. But you're starting to see, these guys kind of have their back against the wall a bit, getting a little bit exposed here. It's going to be interesting to see how they respond this week against Indy. Matt?
Yeah, and like you said, I will be interested to see the response. I agree with Nick. I think part of it is due to the personnel that we have, just somewhat limiting our capabilities. You mentioned the kind of having 2 older cornerbacks. I also think the interior D-line could use an upgrade as well. I think Harrison Phillips is playing at a high level, but outside of that, There isn't a whole lot of options that are providing a ton of spark in that department. So those are two areas that I think still need to be addressed, whether that's through trade deadline or off season, that's to be determined. But those were two areas I think that are the final two spots for Flores to kind of really complete out this defense. But to kind of transition into this upcoming game against the Colts, Sunday Night Football at home at US Bank Stadium, coming off of 2 losses. This is not a must-win, but feels like it just with kind of how this team has trended over the last week or so. And losing 3 straight is just kind of unacceptable. How are you feeling right now? What's your confidence level going into Sunday night, especially now that the Colts have announced that they're starting Joe Flacco over Anthony Richardson, which I do think gives them a better chance to win this game overall?
I agree. I totally agree. I think, the defensive side of the ball, I honestly think it kind of comes down to, I don't want to say one guy, but losing Blake Cashman, I think that's been a huge loss.
Yeah.
That's, run, pass, everything. He can do, he's the green dot at the end of the day. Mm-hmm. So if we can get him back, our injuries besides Christian Darrisaw, we're getting TJ back. KOC came out today and said that he's full go. No limited snaps, nothing like that.
Let's go.
If we can get Reisner to fill in for Ed Ingram,
I'm all on board.
You know what? If we can get Cam Akers back there, a few touches.
Get him some touches, man. I've been saying.
Yeah, I was at the Houston game and he kind of, I don't want to say he ran all over us by any means, but he definitely had some nice runs.
Definitely.
But all in all, I don't see the Vikings losing this one Sunday night, coming off two straight losses, especially, we play the Lions, which might be one of our toughest games of the year. And then we play Thursday night, got to go to West Coast, 2-hour time difference. That schedule right there is just a gauntlet. If you're going to tell me we were going to be 5-2 at this point, I'd be like, there's no way.
Yeah, exactly.
But at the same time, this is a must-win game. Like you guys said, I think Flacco definitely gives them a better chance to win. But at the end of the day, the bank just needs to get loud and stir him up. We need to do exactly what we did to CJ Stroud, or straight false start penalties. So, and you know what? Get Jordan Addison involved. Do something.
I know.
Free 3.
Do something.
Free him.
Yeah, free 3. Everyone was scared about that. But then again, you go look at his IG post and everything that he's been saying that for a while.
Yeah,
now.
it's nothing. But that's the Vikings fan base. You take some and run with it, right? But I think playing the bottom barrel of the AFC South here, what an opportunity to have 3 games like this back to back to back. If you can find a way, I say you got to go 2-1, but if you can get all 3, obviously that's the ideal scenario, and we should get all 3. This is still a good football team. Like you said, we had a back-to-back test, and the Detroit game, it just felt like after the Metellus punch out, Ivan Pace scoop and score, that felt like a game-winning play to me. It just seemed like we ran out of time in this game. I feel like that game could have gone back and forth. I kind of knew Jared Goff was going to get a couple chunk plays, get into the red zone, but hey, guess what? We're down to the wire with the Super Bowl favorite probably right now in the NFL. And then you go back to L.A. Sean McVay doesn't want KOC to draw circles around him. That was his mentor, you know what I mean? So Sean McVay brought his best that night, and Matty Stafford did as well, and Nacua coming off the injury report. This is still a very good football team, but I
have a question. I have a question for you guys.
Fire it up.
Do you think they were preparing for Nacua and Cooper Kupp? I think Cooper Kupp for sure, but do you think they were preparing for Puka as well?
Well, it was just interesting how they activated Nacua off IR, and then he played the first week. Typically, that doesn't happen. Typically, they ease him back in with practicing. I wasn't expecting him to go, but Matt can remember when we got the news that he was going, we both did not feel very good about that. And obviously, he's a dog. He's a great player. He's physical. And I just think he was the difference maker in this game. And a lot of people try to talk about how he'd be on a snap count, this and that. He was not. And he came out and played a great game. I think that if I had to guess, I think Brian Flores covers his bases. I think they were preparing for him in some capacity, but at some point preparation meets opportunity, and you got to go out there and actually play the game. And they were able to, I think, outcoach us and just beat us straight up.
Yeah, and it was unfortunate. Like Nick said, once we heard the news that Puka was activated as well, those are 2 bona fide wide receivers that really changed the whole landscape of that offense. And then you pair that with Matt Stafford. We saw what he was able to do with that. And, just makes me a little bit curious to see how we handle teams that do have weaponry at the wideout position. That's not going to be the only team that we face the rest of the season that has a lot of high-powered wide receivers. So for us, I think the biggest thing is going to see how Flores finds a way to counteract that type of offense because obviously we saw us get a little bit exposed in these past few games. So it's going to be huge to see how Flores can kind of craft a way to fight back against that. The nice thing is against the Colts this weekend, Flacco may give them the better chance to win, but he is also going to be more, or I should say less mobile than Anthony Richardson, which should hopefully allow Flores to kind of help pin things back a little bit and play a little bit more, hopefully, press coverage, knowing that Flacco isn't going to be able to really get out of the pocket too much, and hopefully he's just going to have a lot of quick routes is what I kind of expect out of that offense.
I agree. I think it's going to be a lot of underneath the routes as well, too. I mean, I just saw their injury report today, and Pittman didn't practice, and forgot their other receiver name, but
Josh Downs, good player.
Yeah, he didn't practice either. So, Pittman's fighting it back and just injury, and who knows what Downs is with. But I think at the end of the day, like I'm calling this a must-win. If you lose
momentum.
3 straight, and let's say the Lions beat the Packers, which I think they will.
Yep.
We go 6-2. The Packers go 5-3. We have the division over the Packers, and I think at this point we're just fighting for a wild card spot because I truly do think Detroit's going to be very hard to beat, and I don't really see them losing a whole lot of games. But at the end of the day, like I said, it's a must-win, and all 3 phases need to step up. And I think Quessie's best draft pick his tenure here is Will Reichert.
Yeah.
Beyond a doubt.
Dog.
The guy hasn't missed a field goal.
Yeah.
And he's kept us in games. He's won us games, especially against the Jets. So, but I'm tired of seeing field goals. Like, let's punch the thing in the end zone. You know what I'm saying?
Definitely. Yeah, absolutely. So I'll just leave you with this to kind of wrap things up. We talk about must win. Obviously, everyone wants to talk about the 2016 Vikings win 5 straight and then lose 8 out of 11. That's a narrative that's been brought up frequently, comparing this season to that. I think that's a bunch of garbage. I think this is a better team than that roster was. Just from your perspective, moving forward here, you can go one of 2 ways. You can bounce back in this game. You can take all 3 here, and then with Detroit playing Green Bay this weekend, you got an opportunity to, really get competitive in this division again. We know it's going to come down to the wire. What do you see as the ceiling for this team as of right now? As you sit here today, you've seen enough of Sam Darnold. You've seen what our weapons look like when we're healthy. Do you think this is a team that can, go beyond the wild card, go beyond the divisional round, or do you think there's just too many holes on the roster for us to do that?
No, I don't. I think this team is a 12-win team. The low is probably 10. Mm-hmm. And I think, I think we will definitely, if we get to the playoffs, which I definitely think we will, I think we can win one, and then who knows from there.
Yeah.
Because the NFC is somewhat kind of weak, right? I mean, it's really us.
It's top-heavy, very top-heavy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so it's just really it's just I think it's going to come down to the defense at the end of the day. Honestly, I think it's going to come down to our cornerbacks and just see how they play because like Gilly's old, Shaq's, he's not bad, but Murph sometimes gets exposed, and it comes down to our safeties, Cam and Harrison Smith. But at the end of the day, like I say, if we win the next 3 out of 4. Then we're looking pretty good. And we just signed that Cam Robinson left tackle. We win this game against the Colts. We go play the Jags, then we go play the Titans, and then we got Monday night against the Bears.
Yeah,
we can go 3-4, 4-4. We're sitting pretty nice. So I think the ceiling for this team, honestly, it really just depends. Obviously, injuries play a huge factor, but if we stay healthy, you never know. Sky's the limit.
Yeah.
Because if you would have told me 5-2 at this point, I would have been like, "There's no way." Because we were projected 5.5 wins.
Yeah, 6. I think Vegas had us at 6.5. I want to say
6.5
was the line.
So I think if we just play if we just kill the Colts, then this team's back on track.
Agree. You set a tone this week.
Yes, you know what? If we put up a big lead, just keep going. Do not let them back in the game.
Yeah,
because that's what we're notorious for.
Yeah, I think it's time to make a statement win here back at home. Hopefully we won't have to see the theatrics that this team had last time we played them at the bank. But regardless, I do agree with you here, Matt. I think that we will be on the winning side of this, get back into the win column, and hopefully start another win streak going here with some very winnable games on the horizon. So really appreciate having you on, getting some insight from Vikes Nation. Big game coming up on Sunday against the Colts, and like you said, hoping to get back rolling on the train and get this winning streak going.
SKOL from Wichita, baby.
I appreciate you guys. Definitely have me on again sometime.
Yes,
absolutely. Sir. SKOL Vikes.
SKOL.
Cool. Thank you.
Welcoming on our second guest of the Vikes Verified Vent Line, we have Jack Mulrooney calling in from New Jersey. Jack, how are we doing today?
And good, man, and glad to be here. Thanks for having me on. I love your stuff, and 2 losses. Still excited though. I'm excited for what's to come for the schedule coming up. So
definitely has been a tough, last week or two for the Vikings. But like you said, still very excited. This team is 5-2. I would have to probably say if you had to guess that if we'd be 5-2 after this amount of games, you'd be pretty happy, like most Vikings fans. So with that being said, with the 2 losses, obviously this team is reeling somewhat. But we do have a big game upcoming Sunday night at home against the Colts. How do you feel about this game? Do you think the Vikings can get back into the win column? Do you see them kind of continuing to falter? What are your overall thoughts on the state of this team just really after 7 weeks?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be a big game. They switched it to a night game, so that alone it's going to be, a primetime game, everyone watching us.
Yep.
I think we show up. I think we finally show back up. The Lions game, they're one of the, I hate to say it, being, NFC North team, they're one of the best teams in the league. So we fought with them to the end. That wasn't a big deal to me. The Rams game, I'm not going to lie to you, I kind of had a feeling we might lose that game too, just because, short week going to LA, Kevin O'Connell, going against his old, coach and Rams head coach over there with McVay. And then also the fact that they, of course, Vikings luck, they get their 2 best weapons back on that week. And of course they light it up. If they didn't have those 2, the Rams offense wasn't doing anything, all the games before or prior. Now watch the Rams. I guarantee you Rams will be another team in the NFC we got to watch out for. So anyway, besides that, Colts, I could see us coming back out now, lighting it up and getting a big win, which we need.
Yeah, and this is definitely a nice stretch for the Vikings here with the 3 games.
100%.
Yeah.
I'll ask you this, Jack. Tell me your main concerns on the difference between Joe Flacco and Anthony Richardson. Who's harder to win against for the Vikings?
Yeah, so for me, once I heard the news that Flacco was starting, I was actually, bummed out because I'd rather play Anthony Richardson. I think if Anthony Richardson was playing, Brian Flores would have a D that would have him confused and just not. I mean, his completion percentage alone is terrible. So, I feel like we'd be getting, some turnovers on him too. But Flacco being, a veteran, I mean, hopefully our defense has to just get after him pretty much. I mean, last week against the Rams, we had no pressure. If we get pressure on Flacco, I could see our defense easily shutting them down. So that's what I think the main concern is going to be this week, getting the pressure.
Yeah, so what did you think about the Vikings going on, obviously devastating injury with Christian Darrisaw, but you go out, you get another tackle kind of in the prime of his career, Cam Robinson. Do you think that's a sign from this front office that, hey, we're going to come out here and still compete. We're going to go get a replacement for one of our best players. Do you like the move overall? I mean, I've heard some mixed reviews. I think, to me, the deal is fantastic based on the value we got him for. But I just like that the Vikings are sending a message.
Yeah, I agree with you. I'm not going to lie. Once Darrisaw went down, I was having very negative, with my friend and family. I'm like, season's done now. We're losing this game.
Yeah. He's guilty of that.
Yeah, you're like, yeah. You know what I mean? I just had those negatives. I'm like, just typical luck. Top 5 left tackle done. We're done for the season. Questenberry, he's just solid backup. But having him for the rest of the season, then they go and make this move, get Cam Robinson, and he's a good player. And that shows that, we're not giving up on the season, even though one of our best players is done. We're going to go get someone that can at least match a level to keep this offensive line solid. And, I like the move a lot. And for what we gave up for him, I thought it was great. I mean, it was like, giving up a fifth that could maybe be a fourth for a seventh. And him, I'll take it any day.
Yeah, to me, I thought that trade was a huge win for us just because, like you had mentioned, we only give up a conditional fifth that may be a fourth. On the flip side of that, though, the Jaguars ended up paying $7 million of Cam Robinson's remaining $9 million left on his contract, so that's huge. We're only taking $2 million on our books, so that's a big win for Kwesi. And I also think the ability to, if we do lose him in free agency, now we will most likely get a comp pick back that will be pretty similar, if not better, than the one that we gave up to get him. So to be able to go get a middle-of-the-road left tackle that can really provide a real nice kind of fill spot for this offensive line that just lost its biggest piece, I think is kudos to this front office being able to be aggressive and, like Nick said, send a message to this team that they believe in them and that they're not just going to hang or throw in the towel now that they lost one guy. So very impressed by this front office, and will be interesting to see the days leading up to November 5th if any other moves are in the cards. I think with the limited draft capital, this may be the one that they had lined up and may not have had to really line it up till Darrisaw's injury, but with that happening, they were able to adjust and strike kind of on the move, which I thought was awesome. But we had mentioned, Jack, that I guess you had mentioned that you grew up in New Jersey, lifetime Vikings fan. I'm very curious to know, who is your favorite all-time Vikings player, and what is your favorite game, whether that's one that you've gone to or just watched?
Yeah, so for me, growing up, I grew up. I was born in '92, so like I said, my whole family over here in Jersey was Viking fans, and I started actually liking it when I was like, 7 or 8. So like the '98 season, like Randy Moss, like Chris Carter when he was older, those two, that's what really got me into him. And my favorite game, I'd say probably, you can't go wrong with Randy Moss, Moon, and the Packers and Lambeau. That was definitely
legendary.
Yeah, legendary game. So, but yeah, that's the cool thing about growing up a Vikings fan. We may have never won anything, but I always say to anyone, dude, we have some of the best stars like Randy Moss, Chris Carter. Now we got Jefferson, Adrian Peterson. Yeah. Like we always had these players that no matter, even if you're not a fan, you could watch the game and be like, oh, I want to see this team play because, we had that person.
Now, have you had a chance to watch a game at US Bank Stadium yet?
Oh, yeah. I've been there 3 times, so I'm trying to go again. I didn't get to go this year, but I was at the Giant game in MetLife. I'm only 15 minutes away. I was there week 1.
Well, that's a hell of a way to start off the season. I love to hear that.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, a lot of my friends were talking crap before the season, too, because, everyone thought, like, we were 6.5 wins for the season with Vegas. Giants were, like, around the same, so my friends were, like, oh, I think the Giants could easily win this. We're home. We got the, all the. I'm like, all right, we'll see. But yeah, Vikings. All together for the season. I can't be. You can't be too much happier from what we were expected to be to where we are.
100%.
But I have a feeling a lot. There was a lot of Vikings that had a lot more hope than the media and the rest of Vegas and everyone else had on us. Because I'm not gonna lie, I was thinking like a 9 to 11 win season, even with Darnold, just because of what we did last year with the rotating QBs we had after Kirk. So
for sure, I agree. I'm in the same boat. I was never expecting that low of a win total. I will ask you, now that you've seen Sam Darnold, you've had a big enough sample size from him, how far do you think a guy like Sam Darnold can take this team?
Yeah, I think he hasn't really done anything that's been like, he may take some, extra time throwing the ball than I would like to see on some plays or just, but like other than that, it's not like there's ever like when Nick Mullins is out there, say where I'm just nervous it's going to be an interception every drive, or when Dobbs is out there, he's going to throw a hospital ball and get someone hurt on every other drive. Like with him, I'm not as nervous, and I feel like it's just going to come not down to him, more of the game plan as a total with KOC, him, everyone involved, getting the offense, make sure we keep the run game going. And obviously injuries too. Like, we can't afford to have another star on our team. A couple people go down, but that's like any team. But I feel confident that, if we get our defense back in shape besides the last 2 weeks, I feel like this team is still a contending team. So
I agree.
Couldn't agree more. Like you had mentioned, you had supreme confidence in this team before the season started. And I think, I agree with you there that a lot of the national media like to really drag on us and thought we were going to be a lower team, but people forget about all the weapons that we have on both sides of the ball here, and then adding a guy like Will the Thrill to the special teams unit that has been a huge boost. No rapping or no denying that, the skill set and team that they've been able to put together. So really appreciate you hopping on today. Keep repping for us out there in the East Coast, and appreciate the passion And as always, SKOL Vikings.
Yes, sir. Hey, thanks again, guys. Love
SKOL.
you guys, man. Keep up your stuff. SKOL Vikes.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
SKOL. All right. And that wraps up the vent line section of things. So,
All right.
Nick.
All right, let's get into the Indianapolis Colts this week. The biggest news in the NFL probably right now is the benching of Anthony Richardson. They turned to Joe Flacco, sitting at 4-4. Joe Flacco at 39 years old, probably worries Vikings fans a little bit more than Anthony Richardson would because of our history against backup and veteran quarterbacks, Cooper Rush, Chase Daniel, guys that have beat us in the past. So, you know what? I'm going to choose to take the opposite of that mindset and see it as an opportunity against Joe Flacco. Not a guy who's going to move in the pocket, not a guy who's going to improvise a ton. If we're able to just cover their receivers on the perimeter and stop their run game, there's no reason why the Vikings can't get right back on track this week. But the Indianapolis Colts, last time we played them, like you said,
game.
The theatrics in that one, the greatest comeback or largest comeback in NFL history. Vikings at home, tons of fans leaving the stadium at halftime, third quarter, it was over. And then honestly, an unspeakable comeback to come back and win that game. And one of the funniest parts about it is Stephon Gilmore, cooked by Justin Jefferson on a double move, now our starting corner on the Minnesota Vikings. So that is an interesting dynamic for sure. When you look at the Indianapolis Colts, Matt, outside of Joe Flacco and the quarterback situation, who are some weapons on this team that you think the Vikings need to be cautious of?
Yeah, I think this one's pretty obvious, and that starts with Jonathan Taylor, one of the best running backs in the league. I think this Vikings defense is going to have to do a good job limiting his impact on the offense for them, really bottling him up, trying to fill gaps so he's not getting loose. I think if you can limit his ability, that puts a lot of pressure on Joe Flacco's shoulders to carry them through the pass game, which I think is something that's a tall task for a guy at his age. I do think Flacco gives this team an overall better shot to win, but it is a little bit more of a limited offense in terms of Flacco's going to be pretty vanilla and staying in the pocket, not really moving a whole lot. So I think you're going to see this D-line really do a good job of just trying to do a lot of different stunts and different things to move Flacco because of his old age and somewhat inability to move effectively as his counterpart in Anthony Richardson. So this defense is up for a pretty big task, I think, with the last 2 weeks that they've had, but I do think it's one that they can stand up to and really answer the call at home with the U.S. Bank crowd behind them. So before we get into our game time picks of the week, the Vikes Verified podcast is sponsored by Drip Drop. Did you know that over 75% of Americans are chronically dehydrated? This is just too big of an issue and one that I think can be easily solved with an awesome product like Drip Drop. I used some this past weekend in Los Angeles after a fun night Thursday in Los Angeles at SoFi. But, man, nothing better than picking yourself up with some Drip Drop. So I highly recommend you go get some today, and you can enjoy 20% off when you use the code PULLTAB at checkout.
All righty, Matt. Let's see what we got for game time picks. Just piggybacking on what you said about the Colts offense, you look at a couple more weapons. They have Josh Downs, Alec Pierce, A.D. Mitchell from Texas. On paper, they got some guys, and the only concern, I think, with Flacco is that he's going to be able to more consistently distribute to those guys than Anthony Richardson would with his low completion percentage. But nonetheless, let's get into the picks. Give me what you got for your first game time pick of the week.
My game time pick of the week is a guy that is back in the offense, and this means that he should be able to find the end zone, and that guy is TJ Hockenson. I think KLC is going to try to do Hockenson a kind of a pat on the back with him being back, and I think he's going to find a way to get him a couple red zone targets. I think he finds the end zone and gets 6.
I love that one. U.S. Bank would erupt with TJ Hockenson coming back, getting in the end zone on his first attempt. My game time pick of the week is going to be Aaron Jones anytime TD, and I'm going to say it's probably going to be a receiving TD, but boy, am I fired up to just get our 4 marquee weapons on the field together, being Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, TJ Hockenson, and Aaron Jones. I mean, this is what we've been waiting for as Vikings fans, getting all 4 of these guys on the field and forcing opposing teams to stop it. How are you going to scheme against it? Which guys are you going to take away? It's going to be interesting to see, and I want Sam Darnold to just do everything he can to take what's given to him, because no matter where you look when you're dropping it back to pass, you got a very viable option to throw to. So I'm excited to see those four come together and see what kind of numbers we can put up offensively this week. Getting into the score prediction, Matt, do you have the Vikings getting back on track in this one or losing another heartbreaker at home?
I do. I feel like I obviously picked the Vikings most weeks here, but with them coming off of 2 losses, this is just one I don't think we can drop or will drop. So I'm going to stick with this prediction and give the Vikings a win at home, primetime game, US Bank Stadium. I don't think it'll have the same theatrics as the last time we played the Colts here, but I'm going to go ahead and go with the final score of Vikings 30, Colts 21.
I like it a lot, and I'm on board with the offensive explosion for the Vikings, too. Like I said, getting everyone back and healthy, obviously losing a big part in Darisaw, but having the guys on the perimeter that we will this game, I've got 31-17 Vikings. I think that there's a lot of hope maybe for some Colts fans thinking Joe Flacco, he's going to come into our house and beat us. I just don't see that happening, and I think our defense is too disciplined, too talented to go out and just drop a game to a 40-year-old Flacco. So I got 31-17 Vikes, and we're going to be sitting at 6-2.
All right, there we go. So that means the Vikings get back into the win column. The next 3 games are definitely favorable for us. We've got the Colts at 4-4 right now, Jags at 2-6, and the Titans at 1-6. So
dream stretch here. You got to take advantage.
A lot of opportunity for this Vikings team to make some noise and really establish themselves back as a real contender, not only in the NFC, but in this division that is an absolute gauntlet. So don't forget that there's another big matchup between Detroit and Green Bay on Sunday. So there's going to be some movement one way or another that should help tighten things up. And for us, it's just about focusing 1 week at a time, like KOC says. And let's go 1-0 this week and get back on track.
Yeah, nice to give the players a little bit extra time to kind of rest and recover as well. Going to be interesting to see if we see Blake Cashman this week. I think I'm leaning towards probably not.
I don't think so.
But really wish we could expedite that recovery. That guy is such a good player for us in the middle of the field, and the things he was able to do the first 4 weeks when he was in were incredible. So, but you play on Thursday night, then you get 10 days till the next Sunday. So I'm looking forward to seeing a pretty rested Vikings team this Sunday night. You don't get a ton of opportunities to play primetime games at home. It's time to put the nation back on alert. At 5-0, we had the nation on alert. Let's get them back on the radar this week with a win in US Bank Stadium. Take care of business like we need to. Lot of reasons to be optimistic. You look at schedule, strength of schedule, Lions and Packers, 2 hardest schedules remaining in the league on paper. Vikings, top 5 easiest schedule on paper. Then again, you can talk all you want on paper. You got to go out and execute.
Take care of business,
but hey,
stand on it.
This division is still open, and there's still opportunity for us. Why not go get it and be the team that nobody expected to come out and win the NFC North?
Go get it.
SKOL Vikes. You're listening to the Vikes Verified Podcast.